All right, can you hear me okay? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Fantastic. For those of you coming in, if you can't find a seat down here, which I see a few, there are seats upstairs. So if you feel up to the challenge of climbing a couple flights, there are seats up there as well. Thank you all for being here. It's a testament to your support of our pastor's vision to make ourselves and our lives better. We appreciate, I know there's a lot of things you could be doing on a Monday night. You worked hard all day, and it's a sacrifice to come, but I promise you, anybody else witness to this, that the sacrifice you make by getting here is far outweighed by what you take away with you when you leave from these speakers. How about that lasagna? Yeah. I know there's a large crowd here this evening, but we have a as large, maybe even larger crowd listening tonight on Holy Ghost Radio. So we want to thank Brother Hoffer for making that possible. Also, there's a large crowd that joins us each week on our Truth College at the Rock YouTube channel. That's Facebook and YouTube. Facebook's facebook.com/Truth College if you want to watch there. Big thank you to Brother Austin Keith and our tech team for making all this happen. This didn't put itself up. And as you know, probably, if you're fluent in English, our theme right now is better. And we have learned about becoming a better you from our pastor. Brother Clifton and Sister Clifton talked about a better life. And this evening we'll have Brother David Howell. He's going to speak with us about better communication and connections. October 2nd will be Better Health with Dr. Chelsea Hall. We will take a break October 9th, so make sure you make a note of that. The Monday before Mid-America, we will take a break. There's going to be lots of practices and moving parts to make Mid-America happen, so we'll take a break that week. But then we'll be back the very next week, October 16th, with Pastor Jordan Copeland, and he'll be speaking on boundaries. And then, of course, you know the rest of the schedule, and we'll get that to you as well, but that's what's coming up in the next few weeks. So, who's ready to get started this evening? Yeah. We're always so happy to have Bishop and Sister Holmes with us. And a special treat to have the Shoemakes here as well. We were blessed by Brother Shoemake a few years ago. He came and spoke in one of our classes on the history of Pentecost. And if you missed that class, you've got to go find the recording of it. It was absolutely faith-building. It was incredible, wonderful time. Hugely rich heritage in Pentecost with the Shoemake family. We love them. Sister Alice, we're always glad to see you. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I'll probably get in trouble for this later, but Sister Alice has written a book, and I'm having the privilege to read through it. I would say edit it, but she taught me everything I know, so I'm not going to find anything wrong with it. But it is unbelievable. I'm about 26 chapters in, and I got to stop a little bit and laugh and stop and cry and stop and pray and then read some more. It's just unbelievable. So we're thankful for that. It's incredible. You want to get a copy of that when it comes out. Bishop, would you mind to pray to get us started?
You want to stand together? We're Pentecostals. We know how to pray, don't we? Lift up your hands and let's talk to him together. Yes, God, thank you for giving us this very evening together. Thank you for the great people of God that is gathered here, Lord, to learn and grow and be what you want us to be for your glory and for your honor. We praise you for it. Hallelujah. Everybody up in the balcony, give the Lord a hand clap up there. Amen. Why don't we all join in with a hand clap? Well, you got to know I'm a proud dad. Hearing the Word of God preached yesterday and last night. Amen. Yes. I talked to his son today, and I said, I'm so blessed because you're going way past me. He said, oh, Dad. I said, well, you wait till Benson goes past you. You'll see what I'm talking about, how happy you'll be. That's what it's all about, is to push the next generation further than you went.
That's great. You got to be careful when you give a preacher a microphone. You may never get it back. If Kurt would have been in here on the organ, it'd have been over. He'd have hit, the devil is a liar, and it'd have been done. You can be seated. Brother Howell, come on up here. Thank you, Brother Howell, for joining us this evening. Also, I'm far out of my comfort zone. Brother Matt Herndon this is kind of his thing, you know. He is the interview guy. And he twisted my arm and kind of led me to believe he wasn't going to be here this evening. So I committed to do this, and there he is. So I don't know what's wrong with him. But anyway, if the Lord can use a donkey, here we go. Now, Brother Howell, a lot of people here know you as the choir leader, the director, the singer, the master musician, organ player, just kind of the Renaissance man when it comes to the music world. What do you do? Give us kind of an insight. Tell us about the David Howell outside of church. What do you do in a business world?
So, Brother Zach, this could get scary. That's a big question. If I could first, I'd just like to say thank you for having me. I genuinely appreciate it. And while you may be outside your comfort zone, there's nothing that's going to put you outside your comfort zone a bit more than coming into a building to talk about communicating and making connections. And you have Bishop Holmes here, Brother Shoemake, Pastor Holmes. So for what it's worth, we're in this one together. How's that? Thank you so much for having me tonight. I genuinely appreciate it. So to answer your question, I have the privilege of serving as a director at J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. Most people know us as Chase Bank. So it's both, but the side that I work on is typically known as Chase. I oversee the branch network, as we say, here in the state of Arkansas and in the city of Memphis. That largely didn't exist a year and a half or so ago, and we've been building out a lot of locations here. But in addition to managing, we have objectives that we have to try to achieve when it comes to profitability and growing market share. That just means finding more customers or getting your customers to do more business with you. We have to hire a lot of people to make all of that work together. And we, of course, have to do the things that banks need to do very well, like protect your money. So for what it's worth, J.P. Morgan Chase, we're always taking new account holders, just saying. Spoken like a J.P. Morgan Chase employee back there.
Okay, so you mentioned growing market share, building a business that really didn't exist in this area. I don't know that, 3 or 4 years ago, there weren't many Chase branches, or were there any in Central Arkansas?
No, the first one opened in July of 2021.
Okay, so in the middle of COVID, right? So that was a big step to take, and that was on your shoulders to make that happen, mostly.
So I actually came in a little behind that. I had the opportunity to move here and take over that responsibility the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. I've actually worked for Chase Bank for almost 19 years. Just happened to make the move here to take on more responsibility, as it were. My whole life I've lived in Indiana, rural Indiana. So if you hear an accent, it won't be an Arkansan one. It will be a southern Indiana one. But yeah, did something similar there. The scope here is a bit larger, and it's been a bit different when it comes to, well, connecting with a lot of people, frankly. When you come into a new area like this and you're building a business, as I'm sure many of the business owners in the room know, it becomes really, really important to connect with people on a bunch of different levels, starting with the people you're going to hire. So the bulk of the work, even though branches haven't been open, have been very much in the space that we're talking about tonight. As it stands today, we have, 6 branches open in Arkansas. We will be at 15 by the beginning of December between Arkansas and Memphis. Wow. So it's been a very quick clip.
Right. Right. And so building that many branches that quickly, I imagine that you must go through hundreds or thousands of applications to get branch managers, tellers, every single aspect. I mean, all the way down to who's going to clean the bank in the evening. So how do you manage that process of getting people, growing the resource portion of your business?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you are absolutely right. I think I've talked to, oh goodness, we've hired something like 82, 83 people in the last year or so. And for every one person you hire, of course, you're trying to find the right one. So I would say we've probably talked to 400 or 500 people that have been looking for jobs. But in terms of the process to it, and I think some of these things, Brother Zach, scale very, very much to communicating or networking, however you would frame it, in a lot of different ways besides just working at a bank. I think it starts with, knowing what we're trying to do, having a clear idea of our purpose. So if I'm hiring a manager as an example, really knowing what I'm looking for and the things that are very important to me and that person. And then it becomes about putting feet to what we need to get done, which is get out there and just talk to a lot of people. And that sometimes can be the hardest part. I think people that tend to struggle in this space, that tends to be the thing that holds them back a lot, is just putting action to getting out there, getting outside your comfort zone. Very much like you and I are right now, Brother Ward. So I think talking to a lot of people, and then through that, you make those connections that result in hiring in this particular case.
Good. So I know for me personally, in my world for a long time, I would have a patient come in the office. I've never seen them before in my life. They have really no connection to me whatsoever. They did a quick Google search, and they showed up in my office. And I have 15 seconds to either gain their trust, and they're going to believe everything I say, or I'm going to say something that they don't like, and it doesn't matter how much I tell them, I don't like that guy. And realizing that and immediately doing everything I can to gain their trust, to be open, honest, and make them feel comfortable sharing really personal information with me is difficult, but it's something I had to cultivate and make happen. And so when you are looking to hire, and again, we don't all work at a bank. We're not all hiring bank tellers, but say I own an electrician company and I'm looking for a new electrician. How do I pick out of the 3 guys that show up for the job? How do I pick the one that I'm going to hire? Or maybe I'm a guy that owns a landscape company, and right now it's just me, but I have more yards or jobs than I can do, and I need a second or third guy. But how can I make sure that that's the guy that's going to cut the lawn the way I would, and clean up the way I would, and trim everything the way I would, and edge the way I would? What do you use? What metrics? Are there any things that stick out to you that say, you know what, that's probably a good candidate to pursue, and that one's probably a waste of time?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think the answer to it is different based on what you're hiring someone for, obviously. So if you're thinking about the examples you've given, bear in mind that the skill set or the attributes that maybe you're looking for would look a little different from person to person. But I think, actually, rather than give you the answer to that one, I wonder if we could just try something very quickly.
Yeah.
We could just do a quick activity, if you don't mind. Can we get some help from everybody that's here tonight with just a quick activity? All right, so I want you to do me a favor. You may be sitting next to somebody that's a family member or a close friend. I'm gonna ask you to do me a favor. We'll take just a couple minutes to do this, but I think it will probably go further to answer the question perhaps than me just saying it. So if you could do me a favor, in just a second, I'm gonna ask you to find somebody maybe that you don't know as well. Just look around in the next row or two around you, and just find the person maybe you don't know quite as well. Before we have you do that, I'm gonna just give you a quick instruction. We're only gonna take a short amount of time to do it, but your goal, when you see that person, what I want you to do, and you've got a short time to do it, maybe a minute, what I want you to do is find as many things as you can that you have in common with that person. Attending FPC, being apostolic, those two are a given, I would assume, with the crowd that's here. So we'll put those aside. As much as you can find in common with the person that you've got about a minute to talk to. Are you down? You game to try it for me? Okay, let's do it. Find that person. We'll give you about a minute or so. We'll pull you back together in just a second. All right, we're going to give you about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. I wonder if you could do me a favor and just give a round of applause to the person you've been talking to. All right, so I have a couple questions if we can. I'm going to pick on a few people if you don't mind. Sister Culpepper, would you mind to help me with something very quickly? If you wouldn't mind, if you could just stand for me, talk loud. I don't know who you spoke with, couldn't tell you their name. I didn't even see them, to be honest. But if you could just tell us quickly, what did you find in common with the person that you were speaking with?
Need this, Zach. We actually found about 10 things that we had in common. We just moved. We have grandchildren. We have children. We like to shop. We like boutiques. We love Goodwill. A lot of things.
It sounds like it all involves money, just for what it's worth.
Yeah,
that's probably the most common
We would be
theme.
great financial advisors, I'm telling you.
No, that's excellent. Thank you, Sister Culpepper. I appreciate it. Sister Tanisa, you're close and close to the mic, so would you mind sharing the same thing?
Yes, we both cook. The person I spoke with, we thrift. We do social media. She's more of just a person who looks at social media instead of post. But let's see, we cook, we thrift.
Hey, we'll take it.
Oh, we drink coffee.
Oh, I think a lot of people in the room can resonate with that one. Okay, so I just have one final question, Sister Tanisa. What day are the best sales happening at Goodwill? She can't sleep on Saturday morning knowing gently used items are available for her purchase. That's the corporate way of repeating what you just said. So, Brother Zach, to answer your question, I think you all just gave the answer to that question. When it comes to looking for people in a people-based business, you want people that can quickly make that connection. And you just demonstrated in less than 60 seconds, call it 60 seconds or so, that you have the ability, everybody in this room presumably, to find things very quickly in common when you put your mind to it and you perhaps prepare a little bit more in advance if you're hiring somebody for a job. But the same principle applies. It's all about that connection. And frankly, it's about that relationship. And in this case, we're talking about hiring, but it really applies across the spectrum, be it seeking to learn something new, seeking to perhaps grow in your current role, wanting to move to another role, managing people, all of those things. It's a very, very scalable skill. And frankly, it's something that can be learned. It's not something that has to come innate. Although many people have that and are very good at it, there are also a lot that do not. And you can learn how to do that. And you all just made a great example of that. So Brother Zach, sorry for the long answer, but hopefully that helps.
That's great. So I've noticed when I was telling you I had 15 seconds to get somebody on my side, and I'm not trying to be a salesman, I'm trying to help you here. What I would do oftentimes, I knew they were from Arkansas, or otherwise they wouldn't be in my office. Flip the chart open. Oh, you're from Hazen. I've got a buddy who has a farm out there, and we duck hunt around there. And then instantly, oh, who's your buddy? Well, his name's William Anderson. I know him. He borrowed my tractor or whatever. Instant connection because now you have some clout with that person. So finding a connection with somebody is astronomically instrumental to making them feel like now we're connected. I have a connection to that. You have a connection to that. Now we're connected. And I think that's so important to help build that, right?
Absolutely. And if you think about it, it's really the foundation of any meaningful relationship, right, new or otherwise. It's that connection, but you find it generally by things that you have in common.
Right.
That's what's going to spark that connection that we're talking about. And again, it may be easy for some people, but anybody can do it if you're intentional about it. If you walked into a room full of people that you don't know, be it a networking event for your business, we'll use the Chamber of Commerce as an example. I've gotten invited to a number of their events here in the Greater Little Rock Chamber of Commerce. And you walk in, you don't know anybody, but if you know going in, my intention here, my purpose is, I want to meet as many people as I can. I don't know how this might play out, but I'm going to find as many connections as I can, and let's just see where this goes. If nothing else, I met some great people tonight, and they got to meet me. Again, being intentional about that, anybody can make that happen.
Right. And I'm not opposed to stealing from other people. when it's a good idea. Ideas are great, steal them. And one that I use all the time, I stole from Brother Stephen Haney, who is a master of connections and communication. And so I have a land customer who he wants to send me an update every week. Hey, I cleared this tree, I put up this fence post, I did this. And it's kind of annoying, honestly, because he's updating me all the time. But I hear Brother Haney back here in the back of my mind, and I text him back and I say, man, that looks amazing. You're doing such a great job. And he loves it. Now he's like the police. He reports on everybody else, all the other customers, tells me what they're doing. They need to pick their trash up. And so now we have a connection, right? And he loves me now because I told him he did a great job putting a fence post in or something, whatever. But I easily could have been like, man, this guy is driving me crazy. Just stop. But instead, I used Brother Haney's trick, nothing I did, and that helped. So that was a learning process, though, that whole thing. And I know you have recently been learning the skill of buying and selling land, as have many of us. Tell me about that. A new skill, approaching a new type of business that you've not been in before. How do you build connections probably easy to get bank connections. Oh, the Chamber of Commerce called you because you did the loan on this business and whatever. But now you're buying and selling land, and how do you know who to call about the water or the electric, or can I build a road, or how do I find an engineer? Tell me about that. How do you build those connections from scratch?
Absolutely. If I could just grab something off of a point that you just made, Brother Ward, the idea of how our communication makes people feel, and goodness, I do not need to say this at FPC and LR for sure, because there are so many examples of people that are wonderful at this, including our first time visiting here, and just so many people that welcomed us and made us feel like we really belonged. But to that point, forgive me, I won't get this verbatim. I believe it was Maya Angelou that made the statement, people may forget what you say, they may forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that applies across so many spectrums, including what you're talking about. In this case, a client, but it absolutely applies to an employee. It applies to a choir member, somebody that someday may visit service because of a way that a person made them feel when they were their waitress or their waiter at a restaurant. And I think that was a big learning for me as well, Brother Zach, especially early in my career, was, sometimes it's not the immediate thing that we're after here. It's after the longer game, and to do that, it's understanding that how I'm acting right now with this person, they're going to remember this. In my case, they may not remember what their performance rating was 10 years from now. They're probably not going to remember how their customer service scores looked. But I guarantee you they'll look back 10 years from now and remember the guy who helped them grow their career or made them feel like they could be something they weren't. And that's important. That's been a big lesson for me, and had to learn that a bit of the hard way probably early on. But to your point, I'm so sorry, back on track. Look, I'm very much still learning the land business. I would be a complete novice in this space without question. And so I would say this is a work in progress for me right now, and your question's timely because of that. I knew before moving here that there were a number of people that have been quite successful here in the land business, but frankly did not know anything about it and didn't understand any of the concepts in and around it. I know what it means to own land and to buy real estate, but not all of the nuance that's made it work so well here. And I just started to try to be very inquisitive. And much like you described yourself, Brother Ward, I'm unabashedly will steal best practices from people. I'll give them credit for it like 3 times, and then it's mine. It will always be mine after that. No, I'm kidding. But so I think just, starting to be very inquisitive, and oddly enough, the person that sort of helped me the most early on is not from FPC and LR. It was Pastor Nathaniel Urshan. I happened to be at his church doing a choir clinic type thing, and we got to talking about I don't even know how we got into it now, to be honest, but he brought up the fact that he was working with Brother Tim Adams and this land business, and of course Brother Tim Adams, lengthy ties here at this church, working with Brother Zimmerman, and from there it just became like, let me write all these names down of these people who've done quite well at this, and let me go pick their brains. And I think there's a process to that, but that was the start for me. It's understanding, like, who should I be talking to? If I want to get in the land business, I want to talk to the people that have done it and done it well. So that was a starting point. Had conversations with many people, Brother Adams, of course, Brother Justin Brewer, many conversations, Brother Pomeroy and others as well. So I think it's just having in this case, we're talking about specifically the land business, but it could apply to anything. I think it's having the foresight to figure out who are the right people that I should be talking to about this. If I'm going to learn it well, and then having the intestinal fortitude to just put some feet to it, if that makes sense. Let's just go do it. And it always helps if you're willing to buy coffee. Sister Tanisa, you know what I'm talking about.
Well,
I think most people are willing to share what's worked for them,
absolutely.
Especially here at FPC and LR. No question, it's been just a very giving community. It's actually blown my mind in that space. I feel very, undeserving to be able to benefit from years of learning the hard way. That's just, do you know how valuable that is? I mean, that's multiple lifetimes. If you think back to Brother Dean Martin, and actually just finished the book a couple of weeks ago, and almost every page is dog-eared from the book. But yes, you're talking about a lifetime of knowledge that I get the benefit of learning from, not having to live through it, and that's just invaluable for the price of a cup of coffee.
Right. And the willingness to put yourself out there. What are they going to say? No, I'm not going to help you? Okay, thanks. I'm going to go to the next person. But what if they say yes? What if they do say yes, right? And we know at FPC, we get it. There's plenty of land for all of us 10 times over. And it's been my same experience. Whoever I ask says, well, yeah, I'll show you or help you with anything. I've had multiple men say, listen, you tell me the day and the time, we'll get in the truck, we'll go look at it together. Just so helpful. And again, I'm reaping from things they know that I would have no clue to even look for. And they say, no, you can't do that. You got to do this. And it just helps so much. So being willing to, just say, hey, I need some help, and not think I have to know everything, which is my default.
Right.
I want to know it all, right, and then ask you a question I already know the answer to. But that doesn't help me at all, right?
Exactly. I always think those moments are like having the opportunity to sit down with somebody like Brother Justin Brewer, Brother Seth Pomeroy, and pick their brain about this. I mean, they're very, very busy people. And I think in my experience, be it, again, the land business or anything else, I think, being thoughtful and mindful of that and being prepared ahead of time to go into a conversation and ask someone to teach me how to do the land business probably isn't going to be a very profitable 30-minute coffee conversation. But to be thoughtful about, where did you get started? If you were in my shoes, where would you start? What are the biggest obstacles that you've found in the last 6 months? How did you, just be thoughtful about the questions. And I think, at least in my experience, I've found people across all spectrums, not just this, more appreciative, I think, of that time that they're giving you if they can tell that you put some thought into it and you're respecting that and doing your part.
You didn't show up and say, all right, teach me. It was, hey, I've got this, and this. What do you think? Right. So
I think the same thing applies, Brother Zach, when it comes to, say it's a corporate, or say it's a job that you're currently working for another employer, and you're looking to get to that next level, and maybe you're seeking a mentor, but when you meet with them, it's, how do I become X? Well, that's probably not going to be like a really fruitful conversation if you go into it that way. And I think it's the same thing, like doing your due diligence ahead of time and really thinking through what would be the 2 or 3 things I want to walk out of this conversation with and feel really good about, and what would be my ultimate goal here. Maybe that's the next conversation. I want this one to go so well that the next time I ask for someone to go to coffee with me, that they're going to say yes. And to do that, I need to make sure I'm prepared and I've thought through it. Make sense?
That's perfect sense. So we've talked about, okay, I'm here and I want to be here. And how do I make those connections? And get a plan, do your homework, actionable plan, and then perform the action, right? And that's going to help us get from here to here. Say I'm here, and now I have people underneath me that I am managing or leading in this business. I'm simultaneously thinking, how do I make the connection to make the next step? But how do I also maintain the connection to those who I'm mentoring? And in my mind, I think of it as a military leader, right? I've got to understand the greater geopolitical landscape, but I've got to understand the boots on the ground and how to have an actionable plan and stay in touch with what's going on here so I don't lose this war. How do you do that? How do you stay where you are in your career, looking forward to advance, but also not lose touch with where you've been. And I know that that probably helps you get here. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I think, well, first of all, I love the theme of this series. It's all about being better and having that mindset of, I want to be better. I want to be the best that I can be. I want to live up to my fullest potential, whatever that might be. And everyone here tonight, you may not walk away with as much from this session, but you'll walk away from a lot of the other sessions accomplishing that very thing. So I love that. And I think that's the answer to your question at a high level, Brother Ward. If I, as a leader of people, maybe also aspiring to continue to do more and grow, if I really want to grow and I really want to be better, it does take looking at both angles, and it takes really great connections with people and a mindset towards growth, both directions, to be successful at it, in my opinion. I think some of the biggest lessons I've been taught in my career have been from people that I've had the honor of leading. Some of the toughest lessons that I've been taught have been from people I've had the honor of leading. Actually, do you mind if I share a story with you? In this particular space, again, grounding on the answer to your question, always being open, always looking for ways to be better, that doesn't have to come from someone that just happens to be in a superior level to you. It could come from anywhere, and that includes people that maybe work for us. And two examples actually come to mind. David, you need to slow down. You're too impatient. That was a statement that was made to me several years ago, probably some 16, 17 years ago, by a mentor of mine, someone to this day that I still count to be a mentor. She happens to be probably in her early 70s at this point, and she was a loan officer. She helped people with mortgages at the time. Never worked for her, learned some things from her as I was new in the business, but she had that heart to want to help somebody that she saw some potential in, and she was very honest with me. There was more than one time where she sort of verbally backhanded me, if you will, and I was anxious and eager to grow my career and wanted to move on, and here this person who was not a manager of mine or in any position really to have any influence on this other than just trying to help me, stepped in and helped reframe my thinking. So I think that can come from anywhere. As far as employees, so I was on a visit one time, visiting a branch manager, and I happened to have my boss with me at the time. He was out spending time with me. We were visiting this manager. She was struggling with a number of things in her branch, and one of those things in particular was the level of service that she provided her customers. We measure that at the bank. We survey customers after they come in, and our bar is pretty high. We survey on a scale of 1 to 10, and if we don't get at least a 9, it's an automatic 0. We really want great service for clients walking in. In this particular case, she was scoring really low, and she had been for quite some time. It was clearly a trend, and I knew, in my newness as a manager, I had all the right answers. I knew exactly what the problem was, and I knew you walked in and you could see that her employees were just walking right past people in line and not saying, hello, how are you today? We'll be with you in just a moment. You could see a lot of different things. People were waiting in the drive-thru for a very long time. And I just knew going into this visit exactly how I was going to fix this problem. And so I went in on a mission to do it. And my boss, myself, this manager, we were in the office, and we kept, me and the manager were going around and around about it. She was just intent that the reason she was having customer service issues is because there were some filing cabinets that were sitting out in the lobby over here, and they looked ugly. In the meantime, you got employees walking past customers, people walking out not being thanked, all kinds of things, right? And I knew in my head that was completely wrong. We went around and around for probably 30 minutes or so. She had to get up and take care of something in another place in the branch. And when she left the office, my boss said, "What are you doing?" "What do you mean, what am I doing? my paycheck rides on her getting better customer service scores. I'm trying to help get her service scores up." And he said, no, you just want to be right. You just want her to do it your way. And reality is you're not listening while you're intent on being right. So what's the worst thing that could happen? if you say to her, okay, no problem, let's fix those filing cabinets and we'll move them. You're going to be back here in 2 weeks. Do you think that's going to fix the service scores? No, absolutely not. Okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? You're back here in 2 weeks. Maybe she'll actually listen to you if you listen to her. And I think the reason, if I could just share something with you, I think the reason that particular story comes to mind, Brother Ward, that was, it's been every bit of 15 years ago or so. I don't keep in touch with this manager on a regular basis. She has been with Chase almost 50 years. She was someone that trained me at the time. So you can imagine what was going through her mind when I'm this young punk in there trying to tell her how to do her job. Anyway, so I actually got a voicemail from her. It's been about 2 weeks ago, and I saved it, and I thought this might make the point. If you wouldn't mind me sharing, I hope you can hear it.
David Howell, it's Carrie Imars. Flash from your past. Employee Appreciation Week, just called to tell you I still appreciate everything you did for me. Hope you have a great day. Bye.
I get a call from her every year in September, and she always says the same thing. She certainly does not owe me anything, but the lesson for me out of all of it was when you take the time to listen, even if it's someone that works for you, you get out of yourself and you focus on that person that you're trying to truly connect with, then amazing things can happen. And I think it's a great example. So again, sorry for the lengthy response, but connecting goes all directions, in particular down and up.
Jana, pretend you didn't hear any of that. I have a feeling that the recording of this saying, "You just want to be right," is going to be played over and over at my house for the next couple of weeks. So thank you for that.
I'm pretty sure Alicia will make that my ringtone when she calls. Just remind you, David.
So what I've heard you say is to make those connections, and you've mentioned a mentor several times tonight. And it reminded me of a story. There were several of us in a line. We were on this task trainer. We were trying to insert a central line in this task trainer. And the first guy walked up, and the supervising physician there told him everything to do, and he missed it. Go back, get in the back of the line, figure out what you did. You can do it again in a minute. The next guy got up there. He told him everything to do. He did it wrong, went around. So I get up there. Now, I've watched two of them mess up. And now I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to do that. So I listened to what he said. I did what he said. And he looked at me and he said, "Very good. You're trainable." And I puffed up and he said, "So is a monkey." And but in that moment, I realized, hey, this guy is going to give me a pat on the back, and then he's going to give it to me straight. And yeah, you did okay, but you could do a lot better. And in that moment, I knew this guy is going to be my mentor, because he's not going to give me fluff when I don't deserve fluff. He will when I deserve it, but when I need to, get reprimanded, he's going to do it pretty harshly. And I appreciated that. So what do you look for in a mentor that helps you grow your business or take your position to the next level? What do you look for in a mentor, and how does that help you in these connections and this communication and leading other people?
I have to come back to the story you just told. What I heard from that story, Brother Ward, is that maybe the first two weren't as coachable, as you mentioned. You're the guy that actually was open enough to receive the feedback, not just learning from the people ahead of you, but to receive the feedback and keep coming back. And I think that's a theme in a bit of what we're talking about tonight. Right. It's this idea of being open in the spirit of trying to be better. That's important, and it's also hard. It's very hard to do sometimes. We're all human. And depending on what we're talking about, career, whatever it may be, it's difficult sometimes to put that pride aside to say, I'm going to receive this feedback, even if I disagree. Maybe I disagree with this, but I'm going to step back and realize, I want to be better. Let me listen. Let me hear. And I've had some tough moments. You make me think of an anecdote that's similar to this one, where I had, incidentally, it was the same manager I worked for that I shared the other story with, but he had asked me to prepare a presentation on leadership to facilitate to a number of people who were trying to become better leaders. And I prepared, and he wanted to see it first. So it was dry run the presentation or the talk in front of him, and we did it, and he filleted me up one side and down the other. that's awful, that example's horrible, nope, that doesn't work. Why would you say that? That's no, you need to have more energy. It's all these things, and I could just tell like I was beet red. I'm so embarrassed because our efforts, we want to do well. Our goal here is to, obviously do well. Nobody wants to feel silly, but I think, trying to maintain that mindset of, I want to learn, I want to grow, let me take this, let me go digest it and come back. It's found its place for me, at least through the years, in helping me become better at whatever things I happen to be involved in this case, career. So what do you look for in a mentor? I think it's a great question. And I think I'm glad that you asked that. I think a mentor, frankly, it could be anybody. This is where it comes down to us as individuals knowing what we want mentored on. And I think there's a common I'll call it misconception, at least in the business world, when somebody says, will you mentor me? Usually it means, will you help me get to the next job? And I think there's a place for people that will help us do that. But having a great mentor really means narrowing in on like the skills and the areas that will actually help you get to the next job. So as an example, having a mentor that will help, let's just say, presenting publicly. We'll use the example that I just gave a moment ago. That's a very narrow mentorship, if you will, and this is where self-awareness, becomes very important to know what areas do I need help with. And I think to that degree, once you kind of know that, then you can pick the right mentor. I've also found that the best mentors don't care about your feelings. 100%. Without question. And to, again, that could be anybody. So you got to find those people that will be very truthful and forthright with you. And I think our inclination as humans is to often gravitate to people that think the way we do, the people that have things in common with what we do. When it comes to mentorships, I'm talking about when sometimes the exact opposite could be the most helpful, putting yourself in a position where somebody can mentor you that is very, very different than you and thinks very different than you. I had a mentor one time within Chase. I just happened to hear her speak on a call. First time I ever heard this lady speak. Her name is Dr. Betty Udebe. She ran the state of California, and she was one of the most compelling speakers I'd ever heard. I'm on a Zoom call where she had maybe 3-4 minutes to speak. And she was so compelling for me that I shot her an email and just said, I really appreciate what you had to say. If you ever have the opportunity, I'd love to grab virtual coffee with you. This is in the middle of COVID. And so anyway, that worked out that way. And from a mentorship standpoint, I asked for her help with that very thing. How do I become more compelling in a short time with what I have to say? And anyway, it was a great relationship because I think the narrowness of what she was trying to help me with was something she was able to tailor very quickly into. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. So you find a small area of deficiency, you find somebody to help you with that, and then you overcome it. I heard a professional athlete one time say, someone asked him, what's the difference between an amateur athlete and a professional athlete? And he said, the difference is you practice until you get it right. I practice until I can't get it wrong. And that's huge, right? It's easy to get where you want to get, but is it easy to stay where you want to be and then go further than that? And having the right mentor push you and, say things you don't necessarily want to hear and that aren't fun to hear are a lot of times the thing that gets you over that line of, I do see where I could be better and move forward.
Absolutely, and I'll ground back on this. Again, in those moments, this can come from any direction. I would consider my wife to be a mentor when it comes to being honest with me about how I think sometimes. I know I can overthink things if I'm not careful when it comes to situations at work or whatever the case may be. And so, she's a pretty good truth teller when it comes to some of that. Like, why are you doing this? You know you're probably overthinking it. Just ask them or whatever, right? So I think that's where it's important. And back to this point of knowing your mentors, I think we all have those friends in our lives that when we want validation, when we want, oh man, you were treated wrong, that's not right, that's horrible, you should say something, and man, you're right, and they're patting you on the back. But when we really want to get better and figure out what caused the situation or what my role was in it or how to get better from it, we don't go to those people. We go to the people that are going to be ugly, truthful with us, right? That's a mentor. That's who you need in that space. Someone that's going to say, you may not like it, I don't have a vested interest in whether you care. Here's what I'm going to, maybe they care about you as a person, but they care enough about you to be honest to say, facts don't care about your feelings. You need to focus on this. Sometimes you're too rough. Sometimes, whatever the case may be, it's important.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I was telling a story to someone this week about an incident that happened to me. And I know I do not make a practice of doing this, but in this case, I felt justified. And it was years and years and years and years and years ago, but something happened to me. I was upset about it. I went and talked to Bishop about it, and I said, he's either going to say A or B. Buddy, he said Z, right? Just completely in another universe from what I thought he was going to say. And it's exactly what I needed to do. And I did not like it when he said it. But I went and did it because I'm smart enough. I'm not real smart, but I'm smart enough to know if he says it, just do it. It's going to work out. And it did. And it was as beautiful an ending as you could have gotten from that situation. But you're right. I wanted to hear, oh, poor you, pet me, tell me I've got done wrong. And he said, what about you? And I said, oh, I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about them, Bishop. So, yes, that's incredibly important. I have one more question for you, and then I'll give some of you an opportunity to ask Brother Howell a question. You can have the greatest, best idea in the world, and if you can't communicate that idea to other people, you might as well not have the idea. It's useless, right? So how have you seen communication, both empower your ideas and also hinder your ideas in the business world? Give me an example, if you can think of one. I know this is right off the spot, of where communication helped you and you got the job done well, and a place where you could have done better and it didn't go as well as it could have. And if you can't think of specific examples, I get it. But speak to those issues.
Sure. So we have this is, you're making me think about so many lessons I've learned because of this hard head that I have. I've had to learn the hard way. We have these periodic meetings at the bank where we review our business. We call them business reviews, and the goal of the meeting is to really sit down. You're usually sitting down with people that are 2 or 3 levels up from you, and there are a lot of people in the room. It can be very intimidating, especially if you've not done it much, and you could be quizzed on any angle of your business, and there are many of them. And so I think, I'm reminded of a time when I went into one of my very first ones, and I was very nervous. I think I had completely sweated through my shirt underneath my coat. It was just really stressful, but I wasn't handling the stress well, and I think it was like my way of handling it was to double down when I was being coached on something. There's a particular person on my team that I really didn't have a lot of confidence in, and I was sharing those feelings, similar to the story you just shared with Bishop, and regarding maybe a situation with a person, and this was the same way. So I was being you. It took me a while to learn this lesson, in case you haven't figured it out. And anyway, instead of being open and being thoughtful, I just kind of doubled down in my stress and communicated what I had already said 14 times, and it didn't go well. I think ultimately what I've learned in moments like that, I think, is to be succinct, articulate your ideas at a high level, be open if your idea gets holes poked into it. It may not necessarily be the best idea. Usually when we're in situations like this, and apologies if this sounds a little philosophical or abstract, but I feel like in moments like that you're describing, Brother Ward, we're probably presenting that idea to people that have a vote on it in some manner of speaking. They're going to help you with it. They're going to give you advice, give you perspective. And I think brevity is always important in moments like that. Key points, salient, know your business to go deeper if you need to, but really know what message you want to communicate and get that across in a quick way. That would be one of the lessons I've learned for sure, and be open when someone's pushing back.
And a hard lesson to learn, but vitally important. Yeah. I have time for a couple questions. Who has one or two?
If not, I think there's leftover lasagna. Just saying.
Who wants leftover lasagna? Any questions up there? No questions. Y'all got all the communications and connections down. Oh, one question. You're going to have to holler. I'm not going to run up the stairs. I'll never make it. I'm sorry.
Great question, especially the environment we're in now. So for the room and for those listening online, the question was, any thoughts on virtual communication, interviewing, presenting, having dialogue in a professional way virtually through Zoom and whatnot? Yes. So I've recently interviewed somebody that wanted to be a branch manager, and they came very well credentialed. A lot of management experience, a lot of experience rather in financial services in the business. And ultimately, the reason I said no after I tried to go back for a second conversation because I just wanted the experience to work so well. But the key determinant for me was he did the interview from his bedroom, and the bed wasn't made, and the room was kind of messy, and that's exactly how he would have done his job. If he's willing to get on a call and that's what he's going to let me see, that's probably going to show up in a bunch of different areas. People tell you a lot sometimes without saying a word. I think to answer your question more directly, I think just be mindful again of what you're trying to accomplish. And in the case of an interview, for example, having your notes on the screen, you can do things like transparent notes. If you need to reference notes, have them on the screen up near where the camera is so it looks as though you're looking right at the person that you're speaking with. Turn the blur effect on the back so we're not seeing the bed. I think some of those things. And then the other things would just be the typical making a connection, making sure we're doing all the stuff we've discussed that still apply, virtual or in person. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. I feel validated. I got one question.
Who else? Yes, sir. Wait. Sorry. You're close enough.
For somebody who just started working for myself, I feel like building professional relationships has been a struggle for me. I'm so used to just being a worker, being told what to do, and I feel like sometimes that might come in between me and the person working under me. How would you go about building more professional relationships?
So I want to make sure I understand the question correctly. So you're saying you feel that sort of sense of intimidation coming between you and the person that's working for you? Or you're saying...
Sometimes, yes.
Okay. Am I understanding your question correctly? Don't let me mischaracterize it. Okay.
Or even just like not trying to sound too confrontational, not trying to just more being professional in the, you know what I mean?
So in like a moment where perhaps you need something done differently and how to go about coaching through that?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a really good question. Look, I think some of the things we've talked about, you're talking about this art of communicating as a manager of people or a leader, and I think some of the things we've talked about scale at a higher level, like having a really good relationship with someone gives some grace in those moments when maybe we're a bit more direct. My style can be more direct at times, and for that reason, I try to really overcompensate on, hey, let's go grab coffee, let's go talk, in moments that have nothing to do with something that they need to do different, but try to be very thoughtful about making sure that sometimes I'm just calling to say hi, and I don't know what your work situation is, but for me, that's how I scale it, is really try to ground on the relationship part of it. I need them to know that I care about them being successful and doing well. In the moment, I think one of the best ways to handle something like that is to ask a question. So as opposed to jumping to, hey, I need you to shift what you're doing here and do it this way, whatever it may be, it's talk to me about why you're doing it the way you're doing. It'll help you with understanding how they're thinking to then get to the root cause of how you actually might be able to help them. If I'm giving you an example of this, our bankers call customers. We have a lot of clients that don't come in the bank. And for the Braden Diamond, he's one of our bankers here. And part of his job, he gets a book of business, and he needs to reach out to them and talk to them. And the goal would be to build a relationship. But if we notice, for example, if I'm watching Braden and he's calling all of his customers, and he's just not having any success, all of his calls are 45 seconds long, then I'm probably going to need to listen in and ask him why he's approaching it the way that he is. He might tell me that he just gets really, really nervous when someone gets on the phone and he doesn't know. It makes sense? So I'll know how to help him based on his specific point of breakdown in his head versus you need to make more phone calls, which I might have erred to had I not asked the question. I hope that helps.
All right, one more right here.
Good evening. My question for you is, how do you utilize your communication as far as getting people to buy into your ideas?
So can I ask a follow-up question to that? Yes. if you have an example, would you mind to give me an example of an idea, perhaps, that you want someone to buy into?
I want to start a 501c3 nonprofit that's going to benefit urban league children who don't get to experience those life-changing events like, for instance, going to the Mall of America or even just small trips to stuff like hot springs. And I would like to help those students to do so. But I have a hard time getting other people to see my vision the way that I do.
It's a great example. Thank you. I absolutely do have an answer for you on that one. And by the way, I'm not suggesting any of the things I've talked about tonight, including the answer I'm getting ready to give you, work 100% of the time. It's just my experience talking on this one. But your question is no different than, for me, trying to get a manager to do something that I need them to do. It's still about selling the why. It's still about helping somebody understand the why. And to your particular question, if I think about how to apply the why to that, helping the person you're presenting to try to get funding from, you want to talk about what's in it for them. And I think, our inclination when we're in sales mode, if you will, is to talk about all the things we like about fill in the blank. In this case, your 501c3. What might make more sense, at least to get someone to listen longer, is what's in it for them. So what do they get? What sort of publicity would they get? Do they get a table at your event with 10 seats at it? Will they be on the marketing material? Will you call out their name when you're recognizing on social media? Those types of things. I think starting with the why, thinking about your audience, can go a really long distance to get people to buy into your message. Thank you for the question. I really appreciate it.
And I think coming out not as you're, we all think, oh, I got my elevator pitch, 30 seconds, here we go, boom. The most masterful, probably, salesman I've ever seen, witnessed firsthand in my life is Brother Colton Duty. And the guy just calls somebody and just talks to them about their dog or their truck or listens to their whatever, and 30 minutes later they've bought life insurance. They didn't want life insurance. He was just calling them, talking about, oh, sweet tea over at wherever, so good, have you tried it? Or I got a coffee over here. And he's not selling anything. He's just having a genuine conversation with them and having a good time, right? I mean, he's like, if you ever talk to him for 8 seconds, you love him, right? And he's the funniest guy you'll ever meet. And so he's not selling anything, but he's selling the whole time, right? Brother McDougal's the same way. Hey, brother, I like those shoes. Next thing you know, you got a whole house security system. I don't know how this happened. He's installing stuff. I just told him I liked his shoes,
I think you make a really great point, though, Brother Ward. It may go without saying, but let's say it anyway to put a bow on everything we're talking about tonight. People do business with people, and that doesn't have to just be business. It can be relationships, it can be witnessing. It's that power of making a connection to build a relationship with people that can go the distance. And you think about your doctor. You're probably not going to the one that offers the cheapest services. I mean, maybe if your insurance requires you to go to a certain one, like mine does. But most likely, it's that person that you've got a relationship with. You've known them for years. You want to go to them because you've got that relationship. The same thing scales to any number of things we could talk about. Your insurance person, Colton. We're all going to want to buy insurance from Colton now after Brother Ward's talk. But yeah, I think it's a very poignant point that you're making.
All right. Well, thank you, Brother Howell, for your insight, your time. Thank you so much. Well, we started with Bishop. Let's end with Bishop.
What amazing things we've heard here tonight. What do you say? God help us to apply it, right? Amen. Let's thank the Lord for it. Come on, would you lift up your voices and hands to the Lord? We're grateful, Lord, that you have given us this place this evening. You've blessed us abundantly, and we're full of thanksgiving. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for the great people of God sharing ideas with us to bless us and to make us a better person. We want to be all we can be, and let it be for your glory. In Jesus' name, hallelujah, hallelujah. And the best is yet to come. Church, tomorrow night,